I hope you have read some abstracts of published papers before. I think most of the published abstracts are written well, but some might not be written so well. Among both the well-written abstracts and not so well-written abstracts, I have seen many variations in the structures. Then I became curious about one point. What are the essential structural features of a readable abstract? Let's talk about them today. We will learn the core structure of good abstracts, especially the abstracts that are friendly to readers outside the specific field. Also, at the end of today's episode, we will conclude our Step 14 for reading abstracts. Hi everyone, welcome to the Foundational Skills in Life Sciences podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Synaptologica. We discuss the skills that life science scholars learn, use, and improve throughout professional activities. Your benefit is expressed in my motto, learn the skills, enjoy academic life. Our method of reading abstracts effectively. In our episodes, we have been discussing our method of reading abstracts effectively. It is to read each sentence of the abstract, to understand its meaning, and to classify each sentence into either of the 8 structural components. This method of mine greatly helped me read the abstracts in life science fields, both in basic sciences and in clinical sciences. And this method helped my trainees too. They included graduate students, medical students, and postdoctoral researchers. When all the 8 structural components are used in an abstract, they will appear typically in the following order. 1. The background, the brief and broad introduction to the research topic. 2. The known, a known fact or two in the specific field. 3. The unknown, an unknown thing in the specific field. Practically, it can also take the form of the question, the hypothesis, the problem to be investigated in the work, or the urgent or unmet need to be addressed, the rationale, or the objective of the work. 4. The result overview, a brief overview of the results in the paper. 5. The methods, a concise description of the methods or experimental procedures used in the work. 6. The results, brief descriptions of important results of the work. 7. The conclusions, a brief concluding statement that summarizes the results. And 8. The implications, the interpretations and implications of the work. We already made a list of these components and we examined them individually. If you are not sure about them, or if you are new to my podcast, please check the episode 39. There we learned that a good structural organization will help the readers understand the content. In other words, if an abstract has these 8 structural components, they will help us understand the content easily. They will be helpful for naive readers outside the field. Of course, there can be exceptions, but there is a high chance that an abstract with 8 components is reader-friendly. Please let me make 2 brief comments. One comment about the type of papers that we are talking about, and the other comment about a general attitude of what to expect when we read abstracts. Comment 1. Our method of reading abstracts will work for primary research papers. The primary research can be in the basic science fields or in the clinical science fields. Similar principles will be applied to both these fields. I would like to say it clearly here because an abstract of a review paper could be written differently, although it could be written similarly. We will talk about the review papers later, but not today. Comment 2. Please note that my message today is not to say that some components are unnecessary in abstracts. I'm not recommending you to cut corners when you read or write an abstract. Instead, my messages are these two. 1. It is safe to say that the abstracts with the full 8 components will often turn out to be reader-friendly. 2. If you know that some of these components are used more often than the others, you will anticipate essential components, and you will be ready to understand the content of the abstract even when the structure is variable. This is the end of the 2 brief comments. Now, the conclusions of today's episode. In our episodes so far, we have read 3 abstracts of life science papers. 2 were written very well, and 1 was not written well. And all these 3 showed some variations in the structure. I have read many papers, and there are many variations in those structures too. Then you might ask 2 questions about the 8 structural components. The starting question could be, for any abstract, which components are truly minimally essential? You might further ask the second question. For a well-written, reader-friendly abstract, which further components are truly minimally essential? Here are my personal answers. Your first question was, for any abstract, which components are truly minimally essential? My answer is that 3 components are minimally essential. The first component is the results component. This component describes what the authors found in the work. This is the meat of a primary research paper. So it is reasonable that the results component is a must for the abstract of any primary research paper. The second and the third necessary components are the unknown and the conclusions components. These 2 components form the unknown conclusions pair. This pair describes the question and its answer in the work, so it is equivalent to the question-answer pair. This pair is essential for clarity. These unknown and conclusions components sandwich the results component. Typically, the unknown component comes before the results component, and the conclusions component comes immediately after the results component. Your second question was, for a well-written, reader-friendly abstract, which further components are truly minimally essential? My answer is that 2 more components will be minimally essential. They are the background and the known components. Together with the already mentioned unknown component, these form the background, known, unknown trio. The trio creates a natural and logical flow, which is especially helpful for readers outside the field. So, the background, known, unknown trio improves the readability of the abstract. So, a brief conclusion. For any abstract, we would want to see, in a typical order of appearance, the unknown, the results, and the conclusions components. For a readable abstract, we would want to see additionally the background and the known components. Comments on the components that were not mentioned yet. Which of the 8 components are not mentioned yet? They are the result overview, the methods, and the implications components. Let's talk about them. The result overview component. When this component is present, it shows what type of work was done. It is not necessarily the results in the paper. But this component could be absent because a similar content can be expressed differently in other components. For example, the same role could be played by a sentence in the result component or the conclusions component. It is based on the author's writing style. If the other components are written well, the absence of the result overview component might not matter much. Another component that we have not mentioned as the minimally necessary component is the methods component. In basic science papers, the methods component can be absent. This is especially true when multiple methods are used in a paper. So an absence of the methods component is not necessarily a problem in basic science papers. But of course, the methods component must be present, for example, if a paper is about an improved method based on an existing one. Let me also add that in clinical science papers, the methods component must be present. This is especially true if the abstracts of a journal take the form of the so-called structured abstracts, where the journal requires all the authors to follow the same structure with the same headings. In such case, with clinical journals, the independent methods section is available in an abstract. The authors will place the information about their methods in the section, so the methods component will be available. The third component that we have not mentioned as the minimally necessary component is the implications component. In basic science papers, the implications component is often absent. We discussed it in our episode 49. As we discussed there, the abstracts in basic science papers are often tightly confined to a narrow, focused question of the work and its answers. And this would be the reason why the implications component could be absent. But let me also add that in clinical science papers, the implications component is present in most of the papers. As for the methods section, this is especially true if the abstracts of a journal are in the structured abstract format. In such cases, the independent implications section will be available in an abstract. The authors will briefly discuss the implications of the work there. So, the lesson. As we mentioned earlier today, it is good for us to know which components are essential and which components can be spared. This is because when we experience varieties of abstracts that include different fractions of the full 8 structural components, we will be fully ready to read them without being surprised. This is the end of our discussions about the abstracts. We could discuss individual abstracts later, but I'm confident now that we have already covered the broad, basic overview of how to read abstracts. Congratulations! Before we close today, let's summarize Step 14 of the mini-series on reading. What we did in Step 14. Step 14 was for analyzing the abstract structure of the article. We had 3 sub-steps. They were discussed in the episode 46. Step 14-1 was to review our 8 structural components of the abstracts. Even before, in Step 12, we had identified these components and we named them using our own words. That was episode 39. That is my favorite episode. In Step 14-1, we reviewed them in preparation for reading abstracts. That was in episode 46. Step 14-2 was to give a sequential number to each sentence of the abstract. This directed our attention to individual sentences. This is helpful because each sentence plays an important and different role in an abstract. Step 14-3 was to analyze each sentence of the abstract. Starting from the episode 46 through the last episode, which is 52, we applied our analysis method, that is, analyzing the 8 structural components to these 3 abstracts. The first abstract was from the Milestone Article 1, published by the 2023 Nobel Prize laureates in physiology or medicine, Dr. Katalin Karikó and Dr. Drew Weissman. And it was published in 2005 in the journal Immunity. The abstract is beautiful. 2 other abstracts were examples of well-written and not so well-written abstracts. Why step 14 was necessary. This step was necessary because, after going through the step, we can see a clear structure in abstracts. This structure is important for us to understand at least 3 things related to a paper. 1, the content of an abstract. 2, the content of the other parts of the paper. And 3, the author's writing style. I hope you're very comfortable now with reading any abstracts of life science papers, either in basic sciences or in clinical sciences. Your action. In our episodes, I have been expressing my very personal opinion. If you have a different way of reading abstracts, please let me know. Also, if you have any comments about my method, please let me know too. My email address is ideas@synaptologica.com. Thank you for joining me in today's episode of Foundational Skills in Life Sciences. I'm Dr. Synaptologica. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.